When Rebecca Johnson walked onto that stage at 43, the judges rolled their eyes and whispered among themselves, another desperate housewife chasing an impossible dream. But when she opened her mouth and the first note escaped, the entire auditorium fell silent, and grown men began to cry. Rebecca's hands trembled as she adjusted the microphone. Behind her, 3,000 people waited in judgment. In front of her, for celebrity judges barely glanced up from their notes. She looked ordinary, tired, wearing a simple black dress from Walmart, her graying hair pulled back in a ponytail. Nothing about her screamed star potential. Everything about her whispered failure. But what they didn't know was that this woman had been preparing for this moment her entire life, even when she didn't realize it. Every lullaby sung through tears, every hymn hummed while scrubbing floors, every silent prayer whispered in the darkness of sleepless nights had led to this moment. Rebecca's story began 24 years earlier in a cramped apartment in Springfield, Missouri, where 6 children called her mama and depended on her for everything. Madison, 23, had just graduated college against all odds. Tyler, 21, worked nights to help pay for his siblings' school supplies. Ashley, 19, was studying to become a teacher. The twins, Connor and Chloe, were 17 and preparing for their senior year. And little Zoe, 14, still believed her mother could fix anything in the world. None of them knew their mother had once been someone completely different. Someone with dreams that stretched far beyond grocery lists and parent-teacher conferences. Someone whose voice had once filled churches and made believers out of skeptics. Before she became Rebecca Johnson, the exhausted single mother of 6, she had been Becca Martinez, the girl with the golden voice who made angels weep. Growing up in a small Texas town, Rebecca had been the pride of Harmony Baptist Church. Every Sunday, she would stand behind that old wooden pulpit and sing hymns that made grown men remove their hats and hardened women reach for tissues. By 18, she had won every talent competition within a 100-mile radius. The local radio station played her demo tape, so often that people would call in requesting that Martinez girl song. She had been accepted to Nashville's most prestigious music program with a full scholarship. The future stretched before her like an open highway, and every sign pointed toward stardom. But life has a way of rewriting even the most carefully planned stories. At 19, Rebecca met James Johnson at a county fair where she was performing. He was charming, ambitious, and promised her everything she'd ever wanted. "We'll conquer Nashville together," he whispered in her ear as they danced under strings of carnival lights. "You'll be a star, and I'll be right there cheering you on." They married 3 months later in the same church where Rebecca had first discovered her voice. She deferred her scholarship for a year, just long enough to get settled, she told herself, just long enough to start their perfect life together. The first baby came 11 months after the wedding, then another 18 months later, then twins. By the time Rebecca was 28, she had 5 children under the age of 9, and James's promises had faded like smoke. His construction business was failing, his drinking was increasing, and his patience was running thin. Rebecca tried to keep the music alive. She sang lullabies that turned into impromptu concerts, performed at church fundraisers between diaper changes, and wrote songs on napkins while waiting in doctors' offices. But slowly, inevitably, the woman who had once commanded stages began to disappear behind a mountain of responsibility. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in March. Rebecca was pregnant with her 6th child, exhausted and overwhelmed, when she woke to find a note on the kitchen table. James had left during the night, taking their savings in his truck, leaving behind only a scribbled apology and a pile of unpaid bills. "I can't do this anymore," the note read. "I need to find myself. The kids are better off without me." Rebecca sat in her empty kitchen, one hand on her swollen belly, the other clutching that devastating piece of paper, and made a decision that would define the next 2 decades of her life. She would not break. She would not fall apart. She would become whatever her children needed her to be, even if it meant burying every dream she had ever held. What followed were years that would test the limits of human endurance. Rebecca worked as a night shift cleaner at the local hospital, a weekend cashier at the hardware store, and took in sewing jobs during every spare moment. She learned to stretch $10 into a week's worth of meals and turn thrift store finds into birthday presents that felt like treasure. She attended every school play, every soccer game, every parent-teacher conference. Always alone, but cheering loud enough for two parents. She helped with homework while rocking a crying baby, sang lullabies while balancing checkbooks, and somehow made Christmas morning magical even when the electric company was threatening to shut off their power. The children never knew how close they came to losing everything. They never saw their mother cry in a bathroom after particularly difficult days, never knew she sometimes ate only peanut butter sandwiches, so they could have proper meals, never realized she stayed up until 3 a.m. sewing Halloween costumes because she couldn't afford to buy them. Music became Rebecca's secret refuge. After everyone was asleep, she would sit at the old upright piano her grandmother had left her and play softly, so softly that even the walls couldn't hear. She wrote songs about heartbreak and hope, about the weight of carrying other people's dreams on your shoulders, about finding strength you never knew you possessed. She filled notebook after notebook with lyrics that no one would ever hear, melodies that came to her while folding laundry or standing in grocery store lines. These songs were her diary, her therapy, her way of holding on to the person she used to be. As the years passed, the children grew and thrived. Madison earned a scholarship to college. Tyler became a star on the high school football team. Ashley developed a passion for helping struggling students. The twins discovered their own talents in art and science. Zoe inherited her mother's voice and sang in the school choir. But Rebecca remained invisible, defined entirely by her role as a provider and protector. Teachers knew her as the mother who never missed a conference. Neighbors saw her as a hard-working woman who always helped during emergencies. Employers valued her reliability and work ethic. No one remembered the girl who had once made congregations rise to their feet in spontaneous applause. No one knew about the songs hidden in kitchen drawers or the scholarship letters still tucked away in her jewelry box like a pressed flower from another lifetime. The transformation began on an ordinary Thursday evening. Rebecca was helping Zoe practice for a school talent show when her daughter asked a question that shattered 20 years of silence. "Mom, where did I get my voice?" Dad couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. Rebecca paused, her hand stilling on the piano keys. When was the last time anyone had asked about her talents, her dreams, her life before motherhood consumed everything? "I used to sing," Rebecca heard herself say, the words feeling foreign after so many years of silence. "Really? Show me." And for the first time in decades, Rebecca opened her mouth and let her true voice emerge. The song that poured out was one she had written during those sleepless nights, a melody born from heartbreak and hope. Zoe listened with growing amazement, and when the last note faded, tears were streaming down the teenager's face. "Mom, why did you stop? You're incredible." The question hung in the air like a challenge. Why had she stopped? When had she decided that being a mother meant erasing every other part of herself? That night, Rebecca couldn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table, looking through old photo albums and remembering the girl she used to be. In one picture, she was 18, wearing a blue dress and holding a trophy from the state talent competition. Her eyes were bright with possibility, her smile confident and unguarded. When had she last looked in the mirror and seen potential instead of exhaustion? When had she stopped believing in her own dreams? The answer came from an unexpected source. Madison was home from college for spring break when she found her mother's old songbooks in the attic. "Mom, did you write these? They're beautiful. Why aren't you singing anymore?" "I had you kids to think about," Rebecca said automatically, the excuse she had used for over 2 decades. Madison sat down beside her mother and took her hands. "Mom, you gave us everything. You sacrificed everything for us. But what if your dreams don't have an expiration date? What if it's not too late?" The idea seemed impossible. Rebecca was 43 years old. She worked 3 jobs. She had responsibilities. Dreams were for young people with unlimited possibilities, not exhausted mothers with stretch marks and gray roots. But Madison persisted. "There's this show, America's Voice. They're holding auditions in Kansas City next month. Just think about it. Rebecca thought about it for exactly 3 seconds before shaking her head. I can't. I'm not that person anymore. But the seed was planted, and over the following weeks, it began to grow. Tyler brought her flowers after work one evening and said, "Mom, you deserve something beautiful just for you." Ashley played one of Rebecca's old demo tapes and said, "This is incredible. Why are you hiding this?" The twins started researching audition requirements and registration deadlines. Even Zoe, the baby of the family, seemed to understand something profound was happening. "Mom, you taught us to chase our dreams. Maybe it's time you chase yours." The tipping point came on a Sunday morning at church. Rebecca was sitting in her usual pew, listening to choir, when Pastor Williams asked her, "Come forward." Rebecca Johnson has been blessing us with her voice for years in our small choir. I think it's time she shared her gift with all of us. Rebecca wanted to refuse, to sink into her seat and become invisible. But 6 pairs of eyes were watching her, 6 children who had learned about courage and persistence from her example. How could she teach them to be brave if she couldn't find bravery herself? She walked in front of that small church, the same church where she had first discovered her voice as a teenager. The pianist began playing a hymn she had known since childhood, and Rebecca opened her mouth and sang. The sound that emerged was pure, powerful, and filled with 23 years of love, loss, hope, and unspoken dreams. The congregation fell silent, then began to weep. By the time she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the building, and people were standing, applauding, calling out hallelujah and amen. In that moment, Rebecca remembered who she was beneath all the roles she had played. She was a mother, yes, a provider, a protector, a woman who had sacrificed everything for her children's futures. But she was also a singer, a storyteller, a woman with a voice that could move mountains and change lives. 2 weeks later, Rebecca found herself in a rental car driving toward Kansas City, her children's voices echoing in her ears. "You can do this, Mom. We believe in you. Make us proud. Make yourself proud." The audition venue was massive, filled with thousands of hopeful singers from teenagers to seniors. Rebecca felt out of place in her simple black dress and modest heels, surrounded by contestants wearing designer outfits and professional makeup. She clutched a folded paper containing the lyrics to the song she had written for her children, the one that told the story of finding strength in impossible circumstances. When they called her number, Rebecca's legs nearly gave out. She walked onto that stage, looked out at the sea of faces, and saw not judgment but possibility. The judges looked bored, distracted, probably wondering why another middle-aged dreamer was wasting their time. She adjusted the microphone, took a deep breath, and began to sing. The first note silenced every conversation in the auditorium. The second note brought tears to the judge's eyes. By the time she reached the chorus, 3,000 people were on their feet, and the judges were leaning forward, mesmerized. Rebecca sang about raising children alone, about finding strength in the darkest moments, about dreams that wait patiently in the shadows until their time comes. She sang with the voice of every mother who has sacrificed everything, every woman who's been told she's too old, too tired, too ordinary to chase extraordinary dreams. When she finished, the silence stretched for what felt like hours. Then Judge Sarah Martinez stood up, tears streaming down her face. "In 20 years of doing this show, I have never heard anything like that. You didn't just sing a song, you shared your soul." Judge Michael Thompson was wiping his eyes. "Rebecca, how long have you been singing?" "All my life," she answered simply. "I just forgot for a while." "Well, you remembered at exactly the right time. That was extraordinary." The 4 judges voted unanimously to send Rebecca to the next round. But more importantly, they gave her something she hadn't felt in decades: validation that her dreams mattered, that her voice deserved to be heard, that it wasn't too late to become who she was always meant to be. As Rebecca walked off that stage to thunderous applause, she thought about her children watching at home, about the young woman she used to be, about the songs still waiting to be written and sung. She had spent 23 years teaching her children that they could achieve anything with hard work and determination. Today, She finally learned to apply that lesson to herself. The judges were right about one thing. Rebecca Johnson's voice was extraordinary. But what made it truly special wasn't just its technical perfection or emotional power. It was the story behind it. The story of a woman who had given everything to others and finally found the courage to give something back to herself. Standing in the wings, still shaking from adrenaline and disbelief, Rebecca realized that this was just the beginning. Whether she won the competition or not, she had already achieved something far more valuable. She had remembered that dreams don't have expiration dates, that it's never too late to become who you're meant to be, and that sometimes the most beautiful music comes from the most unexpected places. Her children had taught her about unconditional love. Now she was learning about unconditional possibility. The girl from Harmony Baptist Church was back, and this time, the whole world was listening.